We'll call to order the meeting, legislative meeting for Wicomico County Council, legislative session 2018-12 for June 5th, 2018. Those who'd like to stand and join us in the Lord's Prayer and Pledge of Allegiance, please do.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda, entertain a motion to approve the legislative minutes from May 15th, 2018.
So moved.
Second? Second. Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the open work session minutes from April 17th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, minutes are approved. Entertain a motion to approve the open work session minutes from May 1st, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Minutes are approved. At this time, we have a proclamation. Councilman Ernie Davis is going to read a proclamation for our Correctional Officer of the Year, Master Officer Aaron Handy. And if you could go to the podium, please. Thank you. If you have any guests you'd like to take with you, it's your privilege.
Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm here to present a proclamation for Correction Officer of the Year. Being in law enforcement for 20 years, I understand that correction officers, they go people really don't realize the job that you guys do and how valuable you are to the whole entire system and what your job entails. So on this day, the county would like to recognize that. Whereas the Wicomico County Department of Corrections and correction officers are responsible for protecting the citizens of Wicomico, Maryland, by providing a secure, safe, and humane environment for individuals who are incarcerated, enforcing rules and keeping order in the prison, and aiding in opportunities for rehabilitation and counseling. And whereas Master Officer Aaron Handy began his correctional career on October 3rd, 2013 at Wicomico County Detention Center, working his way through the ranks to be promoted to the current position of Master Correction Officer on October 3rd, 2017. And whereas Master Officer Handy has continued to enhance his career by completing additional specialized training and certificates, and continues to seek opportunities to further advance his knowledge. And whereas Master Officer Handy is respected by his peers and supervisors, has a positive attitude and willingness to assist others, and has proven his work ethics by his performance with quick response in emergency situations and attentiveness to the inmates. Therefore, be it resolved that Wicomico County Council takes the pleasure in honoring Master Officer Aaron Handy as Wicomico County Department of Corrections Officer of the Year, done the 5th day of June 2018.
Put me on the spot there. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate this, and I think it means a lot to me, and I think it also means a lot to the officers that are not here with me now, because sometimes we do feel like we're invisible, and it really does mean a lot to us. So thank you.
Good job.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Good evening. First item tonight is a public hearing on legislative bill number 2018-06. It was introduced at the council's last meeting on May 15th, and it is an act to add Chapter 13 titled County Internal Auditor to the Wicomico County Code to clarify the powers and duties of the County Internal Auditor and to include regulatory provisions related to the conduct of audits.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. At this time, we open the floor for a public hearing on legislative bill 2018-06. If you have any comments you'd like to make in regard to this legislative bill, come to the podium. Please state your county of residence and your concerns. That concludes the public hearing on legislative bill 2018-06. Entertain a motion from council to approve legislative bill 2018-06 by roll call, starting with Councilman Hall.
Aye.
Councilman Kilmer.
Aye.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Sorry. Entertain a motion to approve legislative bill 2018-06. You're right.
Yeah.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much.
One thing I noticed that is missing from this is discussion of penalties if somebody like willfully obstructs like an internal auditor in his duties. I discussed that with our attorney briefly, and I think that may be something that could be added. I'm not quite ready to have language for that right now, but I don't know if we want to pass the bill and amend the law later, or if we want to wait and have a work session on this. I'm open to whatever, but I think that should be something we should consider at some point. But you know, right now, I'm not going to stop things and offer an amendment right now. But
Okay.
so
Any other comments from anyone?
Based on your comment, of course, Mr. Kilmer, I agree with you. We have quite a number of regulations and laws and resolutions on the book that don't have penalties for things that are infractions, and maybe we should review them all.
yeah, possibly. I mean, when I was looking through the county code, I mean, you know, taxi license, for instance, does have a penalty for it. I mean, there are things that do have penalties, and you know, often we don't find, well, you know, people broke the law or you know did something, didn't follow the charter or whatever. But what's the penalty for it? So this is an attempt that we wouldn't have to keep asking that sort of question. But I mean, it's something to discuss. I'm not prepared to again stop things right now.
Well, we are the legislative body, so I believe that falls under our duties.
Any other questions or comments?
So, are we going to vote on this now, or we want to table this until Mr. Kilmer comes up with language and Mr. Taylor comes up with language that'll work with this?
Question
I
on-
think we pass it now, and you know, we might not get back to it. That's
We could, if we passed it now, we could always hold a work session to amend it and go through the process all over again. Mr. Taylor, if we are to amend it now, does it have to go back through the public, I wouldn't think it had to go back through the public process again, but would it have to go through that again?
If you amended it tonight, I don't think it would, but I think it's going to be a little difficult to come up with the language and some of the provisions. Just to give you a quick for instance, if you're going to have a civil infraction provision in it, there has to be an enforcement person. For example, if you look at the section of the code on civil infractions, there's always an enforcement person designated, and we'd have to decide who that was going to be, and I think it would be probably a lot better and simpler to do it at a work session to talk about it.
So if we were to table this tonight, and of course it would have to come back relatively soon, because we have 60 days from when we introduced it, is that correct? So if we were to table it tonight, we could have it in a work session at the next meeting, or even bring it back on the table as a vote at the next meeting with amendments planned and available for discussion.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I could suggest some different alternatives if you'd like me to in that regard, and discuss, but I think it'd probably be better to discuss them at a work session first.
I'm not sure that you want to table this. I think the intent is to go ahead and get it in the works so we can get the internal auditor in a position where he can go ahead and do what he needs to be done, whether it's an infraction or not. And again, we can go back and look at it at a later time, but you know, there may come a time now where he can't do the work that's necessary, or by the time we review it again. So I would suggest we go ahead and vote on it rather than table on it.
I would certainly defer to the internal auditor as to whether he feels it needs to have teeth or whether we might do it later.
Yeah, sorry for not running this by you, Steve.
If you're,
You'd be
if,
surprised, Jim.
if it's a sense of urgency as it is now.
We have been without this legislation, in my experience, for almost 8 years now. I think another couple of weeks isn't going to affect what we're doing, per se. We would like to see it done and done correctly rather than quickly, I would think, as internal auditors.
If I could, Mr. Cannon, I could also point out, we could probably have options and language available for the June 14 special meeting, if you would want to tack on a work session to that, and then it would be ready for second reading at the June, I think it's 19 meeting, 2 weeks from tonight, or
Okay.
today. So if you feel the need for speed, I think we could probably accommodate that pretty easily.
Okay, well, at this time, there's no motion to table, so we would continue.
Nay.
So, I guess I'd maybe move to table until June 19th meeting.
It's
or
a
June-
motion?
Yeah, I'll make a
Is there a
motion.
second?
I'll second that.
I thought you already
All
had a
those in
motion on the
favor?
Aye.
No. All those in
You
favor?
don't need a motion, or you don't need to,
We have a motion and a second to
you
table.
don't, yeah, you don't, there's no vote required with a table and a second.
I'm going to get a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There's no discussion, John, but I do
No
believe it
discussion.
requires a vote.
Okay.
I hate to tell that to my parliamentarian. We'll start there anyway, if I say. All right, so legislative bill, legislative bill 2018-06 has been tabled until the June 14th meeting, okay? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Taylor.
Yeah,
Going on,
Thank you for your cooperation. Sorry for mucking things up at the last minute.
Okay. Mrs. Hurley.
Okay, good evening, Mr. President, council members, ladies and gentlemen. We are doing some cross-training in the council office, so with your permission, Mr. President, I'd like to present the first item with Mrs. Lynn Sandy and then have her present the remaining agenda items this evening.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Sandy.
Okay, so the first item is a public hearing on the proposed charter amendments. A public notice was published in the Daily Times stating that a public hearing would be held this evening at 6 p.m., and the proposed charter amendments are posted on the county's website. We have two proposed charter amendments. The first one is to amend Section 315 of the charter titled Confirmation of Appointments, and that is to add that the initial appointment of the Assistant Director of Administration and the Deputy Directors are subject to confirmation by the County Council.
And the second proposed charter amendment is to Section 708 titled Transfer of Appropriations and Capital Assets, Interfund Borrowing. This amendment has two parts. The first part provides that the County Council is to be notified at least 15 days in advance, except in an emergency, of any transfers between classifications of expenditures within the same department or office. If it is an emergency, then the notice is to be given as soon as possible, but no later than 5 days after the transfer. The second part of the amendment is to add a letter C to Section 708 that says a depreciable capital asset having a current book value of of $15,000 or more, regardless of when or how acquired, may be transferred between departments, agencies, offices, or funds only upon written recommendation of the county executive and approval by the county council. The recommendation shall describe the asset and state its current book value and the reasons for the transfer. Other than real estate or any other items designated by resolution of the county council, a depreciable capital asset may not be used regularly except under extraordinary circumstances by a department, agency, or fund unless it is purchased or otherwise acquired for or subsequently transferred to such user. And this is public hearing.
Understood. Thank you very much. At this time, we have the floor for public hearing on the proposed charter amendments as stated. If you have any questions or concerns, you can come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns.
Yes, sir. Bob Culver. I have a couple questions on them that I really feel like they should be postponed until we have a little bit better time to talk about them. The appointments of deputy directors, I've had several of the deputy directors call me now. My understanding is this is going to be a one-time approval. If that deputy director stays in effect, then he's not going to be coming up for reapproval every year as the directors do. But that's not written in this paragraph. That does not give them the confidence. Also, the other part of that being is they become an at-will employee rather than a merited employee. And you've got several deputy directors, as we all know from experience, will not go up to be a director as long as that's taking that chance away that they could be let go by any council or anybody that's an executive position. So I'm totally against doing that at this point in time, and I think that that should remain as we have it now, that deputy directors are appointed. And once they're in, if they were ever to move up to the position of director, you've got to approve them anyhow. But as to being a deputy director, I don't know why you all would want that approval. The second one, on the second amendment, I have problems with that in so much as any capital asset, 15,000 or more, you could check. We do dump trucks back and forth between roads and solid waste. We've done as many as 3 or 4 dump trucks at a time. If they're not suitable or they go on down to there, and we use them when we're doing pit cleaning, that type of thing. It's getting to be micromanaged when you start taking and figure out whether the dump truck should be transferred from solid waste to roads. And I feel that that's not really another part that the council needs to get into. The executive has the control over that management part of those 2 departments, so should it stay in there or not? You know, my feeling is that we've had 3 or 4 meetings on this, mostly work sessions, and still not enough time to really get the input from all the directors, the deputy directors, and those people that we would be transferring these items from. And, you know, $15,000 or more is really very small amounts to make sure that we have to come here to get approval on. So I would ask for you to postpone these and let's go into further discussion on them. I don't see the rush to get them on through the charter at this time, but we can certainly talk about some of them. I think Wayne's told you we have no problem in, you know, major transfers or any money we do in between departments. We'll be more than happy to send you notices on that. So at this time, I'm not in favor of these and would like to postpone them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? That concludes the public hearing on the proposed charter amendments. I'd like to remind you that any comments, the council is accepting comments until June 11th. So if you have any comments that you would like to make in addition to from the meeting today, you can certainly contact our office and with whatever your concerns might be, through letter or email or phone call, whatever method you might choose. That concludes the public hearing on the proposed charter amendments. Next item on the agenda, Mrs. Sandy.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation by Marcia Pradines, the project leader at Chesapeake Marshlands National Wildlife Refuge Complex.
Well, thank you for inviting me here, and thank you. I'm impressed that you got my name right. It's very unusual. People usually, I answer to everything. So anyways, thank you for having me here. I wanted to give an update as to our Nanticoke division of Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge. I'm the project leader for the Chesapeake Marshlands Complex, which includes Blackwater, Eastern Neck up near Rock Hall, as well as Martin and Susquehanna. And we have the Nanticoke division of Blackwater. It has been in the works since our comprehensive conservation plan back in 2006, but we haven't had any real acquisitions within Wicomico County until exactly when I started. I have been in my position for, it'll be 2 years in July, and we had our first parcel acquired in Wicomico it was September of 2016. So since then, we've been making some more progress, and I thought now would be a good time before too much else happens to give you an update on what's going on and to get input and, you know, develop a partnership going forward. So within your packets, I gave you a little briefing paper as well as a map that you can see within there. So I mentioned our comprehensive conservation plan. That's kind of our guiding book for the refuge. It tells us our priorities, a land protection plan, really states also our acquisition boundary. So those are the areas that we're going to acquire from willing landowners only, either fee title or easements for the refuge. So you can see within there the Nanticoke area, of which a small portion is also Wicomico County. And we have a goal of acquiring 50% fee title, which means actually owning the land ourselves, and 50% of easement, where the owner still retains the land and we get certain rights, for development rights primarily, for that land. And we have 2 easements in progress, both within Wicomico County. One is signed and one is pretty close to being signed, of several parcels. And those are approximately 138 acres and 107 acres. For privacy of the landowner, we're not going to release exactly where those are right now, but that's been going very well. And we do hope that once those 2 are finalized and on board, that we'll be able to get some more easements on the books as well. So that benefits landowners when they want to retain the land, but they don't have any interest in developing it as well. And when we have easements with landowners, they still retain the rights to actually manage it for forestry, for timber, for hunting, for their own use, for recreation. They basically just can't develop or do anything that's going to disturb the actual habitat and ecosystem. And we work that out individually with each landowner as well. So I definitely want to get that word out there that we're looking for those landowners who might have that interest, because it benefits them as well. And currently, we only own 1 property within Wicomico, and that's what we call the Owens Creek property. And it's formerly known as the Rough Track property. It's on off Riverton Road. And we have several more that we're looking at acquiring from the Nature Conservancy that I'll go over in just a second. So the reason that we have such an interest in the Nanticoke is because it is very valuable, as you already know, for wildlife as well as ecosystem services too. This is an important overwintering area for black ducks, canvasbacks. It's a prime area of forested wetlands, and it's one of the few areas where you can paddle or boat or fish up and down the Nanticoke and not see just tons of development, which is very unusual if you go anywhere else in the United States. So it really is a gem for protection. It's also important, of course, for public recreation, fishing, boating, hunting, waterfowl hunting, you name it, people love to recreate on the Nanticoke. It's also an extremely important buffer between the community and the river and water. Sea level rise is occurring, and this is one of the few areas that is actually keeping up elevation. So it is a prime priority for us for acquisition, and that also protects the communities and the neighborhood and the houses around it as well, because we're able to continue that natural buffer. Of course, as I mentioned, it also, having the refuge and protecting these lands also, of course, maintains the river's beauty and the aesthetics, which is why a number of people like to live there as well. As I mentioned, we'll be with easements and with our own property. We'll also be doing forest management in order to keep our forest healthy for wildlife as well as for the area. And we also do see a good bit of visitation, primarily from outside of the area as well. We had a Banking on Nature study done that showed about $2.3 million a year, and that's a conservative estimate from a number of years ago, comes in from the outside for actual purchasing gas, restaurants, hotels, etc. And we have double the visitation now from when that study was, so it's definitely over $5 million a year that we bring into the area, just from people coming down for the weekend, visiting, doing all the sorts of things they like to do outdoors. And Blackwater, being a federal national wildlife refuge, is a nice draw, especially across the bridge. So you might be wondering about the parcels that we have and that we're looking at getting. I know that's oftentimes what folks like to know, so that's why you have the maps in there to show you that. The first acquisitions along the Nanticoke Division were in 2011, and those were both in Dorchester County. Those were what we call the Tidelands parcels. One was Brohorn and one was Big Creek. And then the Giordano tract, which was also in Dorchester, was originally bought by the Nature Conservancy for conservation purposes and then was sold to us. So we work closely with DNR, the Nature Conservancy, Chesapeake Conservancy, and others to decide what parcels make sense to be owned for conservation purposes by what entity. And there's a certain area that is particularly within our acquisition boundary that's our priority, and then DNR works in the other area, and then DNREC works up in the Delaware area too. So we're always in contact to see what does this make sense for who to purchase. So the Nature Conservancy did sell that to us. The Owens Creek tract was the one that I mentioned that's in Wicomico, and that was bought by the Nature Conservancy back in 2004, back when the big development boom was going on, and there was a pressure to kind of conserve some of that prime land along the river. And that was actually, some of the landowners nearby had put pressure on the Nature Conservancy and others saying, hey, come on in here and buy this before it becomes a development. And so that did happen. They were going to try and sell it to a conservation buyer, basically somebody who wanted to buy that property, live there and own it. But then, of course, what happened after that? The bubble. And so they weren't able to sell that. And so that's why we acquired it in the fall of 2016, because they had tried all that time. So they tried other options, and we were the one where it landed. So you might be wondering where these parcels, how they're acquired as far as funding goes. They do not come from the appropriated funds from Congress to the refuge. Instead, we actually compete for funding. How many of you have a duck stamp? Anybody buy federal duck stamps? If you waterfowl hunt, you do. And you can buy one to get free into the refuge or just to support wetland conservation. So the Migratory Bird Conservation Commission is a major source of funding for our acquisitions, and both Owens Creek in Wicomico and Giordano were purchased with 2016 Migratory Bird Conservation Commission dollars. That's basically your duck stamp dollars. So that $25 that you go to get your duck stamp, 99% of that goes straight towards acquisitions and easements. And so that's where that funding comes from. So we compete very well nationally for those funds. And we also, lots of times, will get Land and Water Conservation Fund dollars as well. And those funds come from offshore oil leases primarily, as well as some other funding as well. So that's how we compete and how we get the funding to acquire those parcels as well. And let's see, a couple that are in the works right now that we do not own yet are also on your map. You'll see they're shaded like a little, I believe it's a yellowish. Yes, they're yellow. There's 3 parcels. Those are all currently the Nature Conservancy owned properties. And they are working with us to either sell them to us with those funds that I just mentioned or donate. The one is a donation. The other 2 are going to be purchased with those duck stamp dollars, basically. And that's because, as I mentioned before, they had bought them, particularly the nonprofits are very good at coming in and getting land quickly. The federal government is not quick. Newsflash. And then being able to transfer that to us at the appropriate time when we get the funding. So if you have any questions on those, the acquisitions, what we're looking at in the future, you can let me know either now, or I also included my business card. You feel free to email or call me at any time as well, and we'd be happy to take you on a tour. If you ever want to get out of the office and see some of the beauty there and see what we're doing firsthand, we can certainly do that. Any questions on the parcels?
I've got one.
Yes.
You say basically the Nature Conservatory acquires this land and then either sells it or donates it to you?
In this context, yes.
So this land does come off the tax rolls at some point?
Yes.
So
Yeah, the Nature Conservancy isn't paying taxes, so
yeah,
it's been off the
I've heard
tax roll.
a lot of concerns from Dorchester County
Yes.
about the amount of land, you know, that's off the tax rolls over there. So
Right.
and they're supposed to get some kind of reimbursement. Would they call it a pilot? Or,
It's called refuge revenue sharing.
okay.
Yeah, and that's appropriated by Congress. So we have an amount that we'll give up to, if Congress appropriates it, up to 80% of what a private landowner would pay for those taxes. However, in the past couple of years, well, a number of years actually, Congress has only been funding that at 25%. So Dorchester County's been has been given yearly $68,000 for taxes for that property. Whereas if Congress had fully appropriated it, it would have been up to, $200,000.
These properties that you're acquiring in Wicomico County, will they be included in that?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
So
Yes.
there will be some income coming off of them.
On the refuge revenue sharing. Yes, that's correct.
Sharing. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I always tell folks that to understand the process, because if somebody wanted to, talk to their elected officials about appropriating more funding to help with the tax base, that's certainly important to understand. And currently, they're owned by the Nature Conservancy, which is a nonprofit, so I do believe they're not paying taxes on it right now.
I noticed some of these properties look rather small. Is there a minimum amount of land it takes when somebody wants to put land into this?
That's a great question. There is not a minimum. We tend to look at the value, the ecological value of that area. So, for instance, most of these parcels, like the Whitehead one, they're going to donate 78 acres. The Rough Tract is 180. Giordano's 230. So many of them are not that large. They're, around 100 to 200 acres. The easements themselves are also in that range. So what we look at is the ecological value and the proximity to some other properties as well, because what we're trying to do is create a connected landscape, basically a mosaic of protected lands.
So you're more apt to do it if it was contiguous
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not to say that we wouldn't if it was out there and it was of great value, and especially if it was a larger tract. But we always look at that of the value, and we also look at are there other uses for that? Does it make sense for us as the refuge in the community for us to own it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We do turn down people that come to us and say, we'd like to sell to you. We do that. But we also try to hook them up with other sources, perhaps an easement from another organization like NRCS or something like that as well. So we try to be helpful anyways. So, good questions.
Does the general public have access to this property?
This property at this time, it's not open to the public. But what we're planning on doing for the fall is we will be opening up the tracks along the Nanticoke for waterfowl hunting. We did all the paperwork, which took a few years to get that open. So that'll be a couple hundred acres of really good waterfowl hunting that will be open for then. People can, of course, paddle through our properties, through the navigable waterways at any time. That's open to them. And what we are doing on the Owens Creek tract, which is the Wicomico tract, we've been meeting with and have established a partnership with a nonprofit called Freedom Hunters. And what they do is they take wounded warriors and Gold Star families and have them experience healing type of adventures outdoors, and we're working with them on a hunt. So the Wicomico tract, Owens Creek, will be dedicated to the Freedom Hunters, and they will be bringing out their hunters and actually doing deer hunts, probably muzzleloader, shotgun, and possibly waterfowl hunts there too. So that parcel, because it's only 180 acres and it's surrounded by private landowners, we didn't feel comfortable opening that up to just public hunting, but we wanted to be able to open it up somehow for public benefit. So we thought that was a nice mix because it's a highly controlled, they operate just like any other military operation when they come in. So it's highly controlled. We're working with the neighbors so that they know what's going on so it can still provide value there.
Well, the reason that I asked
Yes.
is the Owen Creek used to be my fishing area.
Which one? Oh!
And we were advised by the Nature Conservancy
Oh, that
that
there's
it could no longer be our fishing area.
Yeah,
And we
well-
stopped fishing there, so I would love to come back there and
Yeah.
fish. However, what you're telling me is that it's not accessible to
Not at
fishermen
this
from the
point.
land side.
From land side, no.
Right.
You can fish from both though. But we are, and that's the sort of thing that I like. For Dorchester County, for instance, I come give updates to them quarterly because of everything that's going on and so forth. But I would like to be able to come here, whatever makes sense, annually or whatnot, or meet with staff. For instance, I met with Weston Young last year when I first started to find ways that what are the interests of the county? Where are some areas that perhaps there's an interest for more public access so we can develop those that make sense for all of those. So we're definitely open to all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is a nice place. Down at the end there is where we're thinking about putting a blind for the Freedom Hunters for waterfowl hunting, because that looks like a nice spot.
Very good.
Yeah, good. Okay, so some of the other things that we are doing that you might want to be aware of here that along the Nanticoke and that will be affecting you, we are doing pre-commercial thinning of the forest at Owens Creek. So we're looking at keeping that forest healthy, and right now it's just super thick pine. So we're working on that. That's better to keep southern pine beetle infestations down. It's better for forest health and so forth. We are also doing emerald ash borer projects. Have you heard of emerald ash borer? It is destroying white ash trees, and the ash trees are all along the Nanticoke. Unfortunately, this is going to be a huge loss, and we hear that they're already there on the Nanticoke. So what we're doing is working with others, including the state, on a biocontrol project where we're bringing in these little parasitoid wasps. And Matt Whitbeck is my supervisory biologist, and he's there in the audience with his junior biologist in training, who's not yet on the payrolls. And we're going out there and actually seeding these little parasitoid wasps to help control that and see that. So we're trying to take some proactive steps to be able to to save as much of the forest as we can, and to also, we have some seed trees on the Dorchester side that we're trying to save so that when seeds blow over, perhaps if the emerald ash borers work themselves out of the area, then we could have some ash trees actually come up. So we're preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. Let's see, I already talked about the Freedom Hunters Partnership. I also mentioned the waterfowl hunting that will be opened up along the Nanticoke this fall, and we are working with Maryland DNR on that as well. Let's see, Salisbury University is somebody that we've been talking to for over a year on ways that we can partner with one another, both for studies and whatever else as well. So they've been very good to work with. And we've also planted 28 acres of shortleaf pine at that Owens Creek area. That particular old farm field is just that's the prime species to plant there. That's what should be there naturally. So that's actually taken off very well. And last but not least, if there was any interest in a community open house, a meeting, or something like that, we'd be happy to do that. So if anybody has interest, just let me know. Now that we have one parcel and hopefully several more parcels and some easements, I feel like the time is right to start planning ahead for the future and thinking about what we can do to work with you all as much as possible. So.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is resolution number 57, 2018, to accept grant funds in the amount of $6,641.26 from the Maryland Institute of Emergency Services for mass casualty, active assailant supplies and training materials. And we have Mr. Dave Shipley here if there's any questions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve resolution 57, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Good evening, Mr. Shipley. How are you?
Yes, I'm David Shipley. I'm Director of Emergency Services at Wicomico County.
If you just want to give us an overview
Yes,
on
we were able to take advantage of unexpended FY18 Maryland Institute of Emergency Medical Services, that's MIMS, grant funds that were offered to us. This was really unexpected on our part. The funds will be used to address several needs that were identified during an after-action review of an airport drill that was just recently conducted involving a proposed simulated airplane crash. Some of the needs that will be addressed with the money are triage, tarps, tags, and tape. Additionally, some things like megaphones and some training will be part of it.
Okay. Questions for council members? Seeing none. All those in favor of resolution 57, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution, motion's carried. Resolution passes. Thank you, Ms. Shipley.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is resolution number 58, 2018, to make an appropriation of funds to the Sheriff's Office for unanticipated revenue in the amount of $67,034.71. And we have Captain Todd Richardson here if there are any questions.
Entertain a motion to approve resolution 58, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Good evening, Captain.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Haven't seen
Captain
you.
Todd Richardson with the Wicomico County Sheriff's Office.
It's been a while.
Not long enough.
If you could just give us a brief overview.
Okay, I apologize in advance. The allergies are getting to me today. What we have before you is our request. The first part of it is $26,250.96. That's a reimbursement check from Legit for a total loss vehicle that happened in January. There's been some negotiations back and forth with Legit, and they've come up with basically a full recovery of that vehicle minus the $1,000 deductible. Most of the emergency equipment from the vehicle was salvageable, so we don't have a lot of other costs other than the uplift of the vehicle once it would be purchased. I have done some research, and there are several 2017s out there, leftovers on lots that are available, and we should be able to move quickly to purchase that should it be approved.
Okay.
The Explorers.
No, it's a replacement for a Charger, and we found a Charger, a full police model Charger. The second part is I'm sorry, $9,183. This is from 3 checks from 12 vehicles that were sold that had been deadlined. The average recovery on those vehicles was $765 apiece. So we're definitely getting our money's worth out of them prior to them leaving us. And added to that is $31,600, and that's from the sex offender registry reimbursement from the governor's office. And we're asking those two amounts be combined for $40,783 to be put into our vehicle maintenance account to get us through the remainder of this year. We're already overspent on that account. Trying not to absorb it through other accounts. We have 3.5 weeks left in the year. This year we've had over 30 repairs of $1,000 or over to our current fleet. And this would allow us to get through the remainder of this year without basically taking from other accounts.
Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of Resolution 58, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried, resolution passes.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, and the next item is Resolution Number 59, 2018, approving a request to waive the landfill tipping fees for a neighborhood cleanup event sponsored by the town of Hebron.
Entertain a motion to approve Resolution 59, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is Mr. Dwyer here?
Didn't see him.
Excuse me? Okay. Any discussion from council? All right. All those in favor of Resolution 59, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried, resolution passes.
And Mr. President, that's all I have.
Great, thank you very much. This time we adjourn from the legislation so that we may reconvene, so that we may convene as the County Board of Health. Entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now convened as the County Board of Health. First item on the agenda is a report of the health of the county with Ms. Lori Brewster, our health officer. Good evening, how are you?
Again, Lori Brewster, Health Officer for Wicomico County. I provided you with some information in your brief books. One of the positive events occurring in Wicomico County right now is a decline in overdose deaths from opiates that we are relating to very significantly our COAT team that the county has funded. And we are also seeing a decline in the other 2 counties because of the COAT team as well. So the Lower Shore is seeing a decline in overdose deaths, which is a real plus for us.
Laura, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
You said overdose deaths from opioids. Is it opioids that's the deaths are coming from, or is it other drugs?
Primarily the opioids, the Oxycontins, the heroin, and the fentanyl at this point.
So is heroin and fentanyl considered opioids?
Yes.
They are, okay.
Yes.
That's where I was confused at. But is it mostly those, or is it prescription opioids that's causing the deaths?
At this point, it's primarily fentanyl.
Okay, it's fentanyl.
Yes.
It's not prescription. It's not, okay. All right, thank you.
Not to say that there aren't any, but it's primarily fentanyl.
Mixed with heroin? Or
Mixed with
something?
heroin, and sometimes just primarily fentanyl.
Okay.
People think they're buying heroin, and it's truly fentanyl.
Are there any overdose deaths from other drugs, or is this, almost exclusively an opioid problem?
There are a few, particularly the benzodiazepines, but a lot of times they are mixed with alcohol, which is a significant issue as far as overdose capacity. But primarily it's the opioids that are causing the overdose deaths that the nation is seeing and Maryland is seeing. And we have been on the state's map as the county that has seen the most significant decline. So, I do take that as a plus for Wicomico County as well as for the state. And we've actually been asked to speak at several events, including the Opioid Operational Command Center. The leader of that, Clay Stamp, as well as the Secretary of Health, invited Mr. David Shipley and I to present on our COAT program because we had such good outcomes, and that was in the fall of last year. We also, I'm speaking with Mr. Clay Stamp at Maryland Municipal League later this month. So we also have seen a decline in the overdose cases that arrive at PRMC in the emergency department. We saw over a 50% decline from 2016 to 2017, and we're still seeing a little bit of a decline. This year we did have a little bit of an uptick in overdoses arriving in the emergency department. In the month of March, someone presented a possible reason for that being people having access to expendable income because tax refunds came in the month of March, but we're not really sure. We've also continued with our community forums throughout Wicomico County. We did our last one in bivalve. We're putting a hold on those until the fall because people are so busy in the summer months, so we're going to start up again in the fall. The second issue is the synthetic cannabinoids that are out in the community. This started in March of 2018 in Illinois, and they had a significant number of deaths because the synthetic cannabinoids are being laced with rat poisoning. People aren't they may be realizing that, but they are not concerned about that. And basically what happens is the people that consume these rat poisoning components have hemorrhaging of the eyes and other body parts. So they, Illinois had a significant number of deaths related to this. Maryland began seeing this in April of 2018. And it's a very, very long course of treatment for these individuals with very expensive medications to try to control their hemorrhaging and bleeding. We haven't seen any deaths in Wicomico County from this, but we have had cases in Wicomico County. The third area that I wanted to bring to your all's attention is the whole issue of our sexually transmitted infections. We're seeing a slight decrease in the chlamydia infections, particularly in our youth, but we are still ranked number 4 in the state, and that does not give me pride. It gives me grave concern. Even more concern is we rank number 1 in the state for gonorrhea. So we're doing a lot of work with a task force that includes the school system, a number of community members, Salisbury University, to try to get messaging out related to the whole issue of gonorrhea and chlamydia infection so that we can try to drive down that rate. I don't like being number 1 in the state for anything unless it's positive. And as you see in your briefing, our syphilis numbers rose just a small number, but it's a much higher increase because they're very small numbers to begin with. The fourth area is our county health rankings. I usually do a report to you all on the county health rankings that's done by Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I chose not to go into a lot of detail with that because our ranking has not changed over the course of the years. We still are ranked in the 18th slot, and they rate us on mortality and morbidity as well as some other components such as our crime rate and air pollution. Some things that we're really confused as to how they become public health issues and how we are ranked according to them. The final area, last week we had a press conference with the City of Salisbury EMS and the hospital. We are the recipients of a SWIFT grant from the Maryland Community Health Resource Commission. SWIFT stands for Salisbury Wicomico Integrated First Care Team, in which paramedic and nurses go out into the community to individuals that are high utilizers of the 911 system as well as the emergency department to try to wrap services around these individuals to keep them in the community as opposed to utilizing the high-cost emergency system. We're seeing a lot of success with that. The first 6 months were funded with a Care First grant that the health department wrote for and received. And now the commission is continuing this for another 2 years. We're hopeful that a piece of legislation that was before the state last year will be submitted again, which will allow for the EMS division to apply for and receive reimbursements for Medicaid on those services, so we won't have to rely on grant funding. It's an excellent service. Queen Anne's County was the first county to start it in Maryland, and we are the 7th county that has picked up this program. So we're really pleased that we're able to continue this program with the hospital and the city.
Good. You didn't take a breath.
Trying to get you all out of here.
Any questions for Director Brewster?
How many deaths were there this year with opioid?
2017 has not been finalized at this point because they have to be confirmed through the medical examiner's office. So I can't give you the final number for this year, but it is, we're on target for less than 2016.
You have a question, Larry? Yeah, I hope people recognize exactly to what length you've gone with this opioid issue. This is very unusual, I think, trending throughout the United States, that the numbers are actually going to go down instead of up. So, that's a great tribute to the work that you're doing and your staff is doing to bring those numbers down. You said, did you say 50%?
The emergency department overdoses, yes,
Emergency
we brought them
department
down
overdoses
50%.
That's really huge.
It
And
is.
that's not only great for the individuals who are, going through this, but, all the other agencies and organizations that have to expend their resources to take care of those issues.
Absolutely. And we're doing a lot of training of the community with naloxone as well, so that if somebody overdoses, they can bring them back. We have those classes at the library the second Tuesday of every month, and we've been doing them in association with our forums that we've been holding.
And I saw a commercial last night.
Yes.
Do you have a question, Joe?
Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Give me 1 second, folks. Entertain a motion, if I could, to adjourn from the County Board of Health and enter back into to reconvene the legislative session.
Is that moved?
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're now reconvene legislative session in the Wicomico County Council for June 5th. Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, excuse me. This is an introduction of Legislative Bill 2018-07. It's being introduced by the Council President at the request of the County Executive. And it is an act to amend the Wicomico County Personnel Manual, Chapter 9, entitled Work Rules, Chapter 10, entitled Employee Benefits, and Chapter 15, entitled Leave and Holiday Benefits, to comply with the Maryland Healthy Working Families Act. And I might just point out that act is the one that was passed in the last year's legislative session, vetoed by Governor Hogan, and his veto was overridden, I think, in the very first day of the legislative session this year.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Entertain a motion from council to introduce legislative bill 2018-07.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the introduction of Legislative Bill 2018-07, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Legislative Bill 2018-07 has been introduced. Mrs. Sandy?
A public hearing on Legislative Bill 2018-07 can be held on July 3rd at 6 p.m.
Councilman Kilmer?
May I ask Wayne this? I mean, this is essentially state law, isn't it? We don't really have much choice in this, do we? Yeah, okay, all right. Just want to make that clear that, I mean, I imagine it's pretty much copied from state code. So, okay, all right. Just want to know what we can do and what we can't do.
And you said the date was June?
July 3rd.
July 3rd. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we open the floor for public comments. If you have any comments that you'd like to make, come to the podium, please. State your name, your county of residence, and your concerns. Okay, seeing none, that concludes public. Yes, sir. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. Terry Jones, Wicomico County. I'm also Chief Engineer and Secretary for Station 13. I understand that tonight is open, or the
Work
session
session.
is
Correct.
on the budget. We're asking that the council please consider keeping us in the budget that Mr. Carver has submitted. I believe it was $30,000. It's been a year since we've been here. It's been a fast year, been productive for us. There's been a lot of hoops and hurdles that we've had to go through. We've done that. Just like last year, we are members of the Maryland State Firemen's Association, the Wicomico County Volunteer Firefighters Association, and the Wicomico County Chiefs Association, and have been since 1986. We have acquired 2 Class A pumpers that are equipped with tools, hoses, radios. They're ready to respond. We've been inspected by the MSFA and certified. This inspection was requested last year at the State Firemen's Association, and to our knowledge, we're the only station in Wicomico County that has this certification. We have purchased radios and handheld radios for our equipment. It's all been programmed and installed by the Wicomico County Department of Emergency Services Radio Division. Our pagers have been programmed. We're ready to respond with them as well. We've been holding fundraisers for the past year and a little over a year and a half. We have barbecues in the summertime on Fridays and Saturdays, and we have bingo every Wednesday night. And their attendance for the bingo has been rising. We're up to roughly 55 to 60 people every Wednesday. Our community service, we've been handing out smoke detectors and installing those. We've also handed out fire extinguishers. We're one of the few companies that actually hand out fire extinguishers. And as of last month, we've also been requested by the Wicomico Equestrian Center to pump out water from all the rains that we've had. And we did that and pumped over 60,000 gallons of water so they could hold their horse show last, I think it was 2 weeks ago. We've had an auxiliary formed with the ladies, and they are now members of the Ladies Maryland State Firemen's Association and the Wicomico County Ladies Association. We've acquired workman's compensation insurance, which is provided to all the other departments by the county. We've done that on our own. And we're just ready to serve the community, citizens of Wicomico County. I don't believe there's anybody that should refuse help from qualified members of the fire service, but that's what we're here to do. And that's all I'm asking, that we be considered to stay on to the county budget that Mr. Carver has submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any other public comments?
Good evening, Shanda Perry. I am a resident of Wicomico County, also the president of the Wicomico County Volunteer Firefighters Association. I said firemen and offended myself. I've spoken to the council previously. I know that most of the council members have attended meetings. I am here to give my support for Station 13 for the money that was written into the budget that is in danger of being cut or has been cut, to ask for the consideration. Most of my sentiments would have been exactly what Terry just told you guys. I'm well aware of what they've done for the community, what they've continued to do in the community against adversity, and really just a lot of not being accepted by a lot of people, maybe unjustly. My thoughts and feelings are mostly my own, and they are personal. I've been a volunteer firefighter myself for 25 years. I've been a volunteer EMT for over 20. I've also been in a paid EMT position for 19 years. So anyone who does this job as a volunteer, and I say job because you do put in time, you don't get the money back for it, but that's why we're here. But anyone who does this can say that we give up a lot. I can't remember a single week that went by that my family growing up wasn't disrupted by a very loud pager. And even now, I will tell you, I have 2 nieces who are firefighters. One is an EMT as well. My daughter is in the fire department as well. My brothers, my sisters. When we have Sunday dinners, it's pretty much expected that something will happen. And all of the ladies and gentlemen from Station 13 have done that for many years and given their time. I've missed school events. I've missed lots of things to give to what I believed in, which is serving the fire department, which is ultimately serving the community. And I believe they've given maybe even a little more in the last year, because a lot of people would have given up and walked away and said, we don't need to continue because we're not getting anywhere. I know that there are thousands of hours of training and years of experience within their membership. And let's be honest, most of that training and experience came from county funds paying for classes, county funds paying for things for them to get experience. And if we're willing to just not support them, it's like losing an investment, in my opinion. And I'm convinced that ultimately other departments, and I know you've all been at our meetings and seen, we don't really have a clear-cut decision on what we want them to do or what the future may hold. But we also don't want to be blindsided by the need for those people. And I believe there is a need. I believe they can be very helpful for training. I believe they have lots, like I said, a lot of years of experience, and other fire departments are wary because they thought they were going to lose funding for themselves and or lose territory. That created a little bit of chaos, but I don't believe that's the intention. They're not there to take anything away from the rest of the departments in this county as far as volunteer. With that being said, let me make sure that everyone understands that I understand Salisbury has volunteers and that I did speak against them receiving county money, not because I don't believe in volunteers getting the money, but I do believe that the city should be providing for their own volunteers, the same as I believe the county should be providing for our county volunteers. And I believe that 13 is a county station, and they have county people who live here, work here, have children here, who hopefully are going to go on to continue this tradition, which I'm sure all of you are aware that retention and recruitment is a huge problem in this world right now for that specific details of giving up your time and money to be a volunteer, to do it for nothing but satisfaction that you are a volunteer. So I spoke from the heart. I'm a female. That's what I do. I'm in a man's world, but I'll give you my honest opinion. And I do thank you for taking the time to listen, and I hope that you'll consider and that maybe even though we're not aware of what the future's gonna hold, that we don't find ourselves blindsided and waste away 40-some people in this station that want to give time, want to give their heart and soul to protecting their community, helping their community in, as Terry said, pretty much any way they can. Doesn't mean they want to go into a burning building. They haven't been able to do that in a year and a half. So they're not there for the adrenaline that some people may think that that's why they're there. They're there to help, and that's really what they want to do. And I want to help them, and I believe we should support them.
Thank you, Ms. Berry.
Thank you.
And we thank both of you for your years of service as well. Any other public comments? Council comments? Any council comments? Everybody's good there? What I will do is entertain a motion to adjourn. Before I do this, I think this would be a time to let the public know that the council will hold a special legislative session on June 14th at 10 a.m. At that time, we will adopt the budget and set the tax rate for fiscal year 2019. Again, that's June 14th at 10 a.m. in council chambers here in the government office building. Entertain a motion to adjourn from legislative session to go into open work sessions, followed by an Urban Services Commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Legislative session is adjourned. First item on the open work session is the countywide housing rehabilitation program. Ms. Lori Carter, I see you there. If you'd like to come up, that'd be great. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Ms. Meadows, you're on the list too. Sorry about that. Good thing she's here, right? Yeah, it's not good. If you could state for the public your name, titles.
Yes, I'm Lori Carter. I'm the Deputy Director for Planning and Zoning.
Okay.
Cheryl Meadows, I'm the Executive Director for Salisbury Neighborhood Housing Services.
We're here today to bring you up to date with our FY 2017 Community Development Block Grant and on the down payment assistance. And I will turn that over to Ms. Meadows, who will give you that particular overview on what that particular program has done over the last 2 years.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Thank you, Lori. So in 2017, the county supported our application for funding for a down payment and closing cost grant assistance program for low and moderate income people that were purchasing a home as their primary residence in Wicomico County, but outside of the city limits. We were awarded $300,000. $270,000 of that was used for the direct grants on behalf of the homeowner, and then $30,000 was reserved for program administration. We anticipated that we would serve 27 families, but we were actually able to serve 32 families. And we expended the funds well before the grant period. In fact, the grant period hasn't even ended yet, but we're out of money. Of the 32 families that were served, 23 were below 80% of area median income, and the remaining 9 were below 50% of area median income. Everyone that participates in the program is required to complete a home buyer education class. It is a HUD certified program, and each family is required to have a minimum of $1,000 of their own fund in the deal somewhere. That $1,000 can come from home inspection fee, the appraisal fee, their earnest money deposit. As long as they have $1,000, they're eligible to receive the block grant funds as well. The $300,000 that we received in block grant funding leveraged just over $4 million in first mortgage loans and another $59,500 in other down payment assistance, seller credits, other state of Maryland loan programs that are available. The report that I just passed out to you says quarterly report, but is actually a cumulative report of everyone that has participated in the program. The addresses are listed so you can see the distribution of who purchased where. There's information on the income level, whether the family had an elderly person in the family, they were disabled, female head of household, and the amount of CDBG assistance that they received.
Last year?
This is the current program that we just finished, yeah.
It actually expires on July the 30th.
So, but these 32, are those purchases over the last year?
Yes. The first one that was closed was December of 2016.
Okay.
So the majority of them were 2017.
Okay. How do you get the properties? Are these on the MLS, or is it other sources?
Most of our referrals come from realtors that are working with the family that's looking to buy a home. We do regular quarterly meetings with the real estate community, going to each office to let them know what programs are available to help their clients become homeowners in the county.
Mm-hmm.
It's on our website. It's on Lori,
It's on
probably
our
on the
website.
county
Yep.
website.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, there's not a lack of people.
There's not a
wanting-
lack
yeah.
of people.
Oh, got it.
been great.
Homeownership, yeah, homeownership is great.
And do you want me to go into?
Yeah, and so while we will actually proceed, since she's done such a wonderful job for Wicomico, we would like to continue. I'm going to have Cheryl to talk about what she would like to actually do for 2019 FY funds.
So again, we're asking the county to support our application for an additional $300,000. This time, we're going to increase the amount of the closing cost assistance grants to $280 and reduce our admin fee to $20,000, so we can help a few more people.
Okay. I'm sorry, did you want to increase it to 20,000? Is that what you're saying?
No,
Reduce.
reduce it. Last year, we had $30,000 for
Oh, okay.
program admin. This year, we're going to reduce it to 20 and increase the amount of actual grants that we can give out.
Do you have a limit on the cost of the home, the price of the home?
There's not, as long as they are income eligible and they can support the mortgage payment, there's not a restriction on the purchase price. I do have the income limits. Just to give you an example, a family of 4 people can't make more than $57,450. So there's only, so much buying power that a family of that income has. They're not buying $500,000 houses.
I know in the past we've had some questionable,
We did have one that bought a house that was over $200,000. That particular family had no other debt, so they were able to buy more of a house than our typical
And sustain
homeowner
that.
does. Most families are buying in the $130,000 to $150,000 range.
For first timers.
How do you arrange the financing? Do you do that along standard procedures, or is there any other assistance?
Most people are getting their mortgage from some other lender.
Okay.
Some do get financing through us, but most of them are getting their mortgage somewhere else.
Okay.
But it has to be a 30-year fixed mortgage, no adjustable rates allowed. And we do go behind and make sure that the family can sustain the mortgage payment.
Okay.
And then, of course, if something does happen and they get into trouble, we're also a HUD-certified counseling agency, so they know they can come back to us for assistance.
When does your next series of funding begin?
Well, the application's due on June
22nd,
22nd.
and hopefully the way that it normally works, we will get a notice by July, whether or not if we make the first particular cut.
Okay.
And then we normally will receive a notice sometime in September. So normally by the time we get done those reviews, we normally have funds possibly by October 1st.
Okay.
And we have a separate pot of funding for the city. So
So this is
we're
strictly
doing it in this,
Wicomico.
yes, this is,
Okay. Busy.
yeah.
Any other questions?
And before we go
Yes.
there, I would also like to say we would like to also actually continue our housing rehab program. We would like to request $350,000 at present, we have about a 326-person waiting list, and it grows daily. We would like to be able to actually continue because that has been something that's definitely a need within the actual community.
I have a question about that, Lori. Are they county residents or are they city residents?
They are county residents.
County residents. Okay, thank you.
That's it?
All right.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be back. Mr. President.
Yes, we do have to have a public hearing
Okay,
to accept.
that can be
But we're
done
not
on,
requiring a consensus today on everything, no. No.
No, you'll vote on it by resolution at the next meeting, which would be also a public hearing,
Okay.
required by state law.
That
Okay.
is correct.
All right. I just want to make sure we didn't have to worry about it.
No, we just won't. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thank you.
And just for the record, that public hearing will be June the 19th at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Next item on the agenda is the update of the stormwater management. I know Director of Public Works, Mr. Dallas Baker, is here. Good evening, Mr. Baker. How are you?
Good evening, how are you all?
Good.
Do you have the VGA folder? Dallas, the VGA or VGA? No, the VGA.
Old school.
Dallas Baker, Director of Public Works for the county.
How are we making out?
We're getting there.
It's still raining.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope not. Yeah, I got it. Sorry. Let me get it started first.
Never apologize for that, Dallas.
Is that a baby picture?
Yeah, he literally just turned 15 yesterday, so that was a few years ago. Yeah.
And he would love you showing that to him.
Yeah. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, a little more appropriate. All right. So everybody know back in the week of the 18th, 19th, we had a lot of rain. We had a lot of rain leading up through that week. We had, the numbers I've heard were 10.5 inches throughout that week. That specific Friday, the 18th, into the 19th, we reported 6.5 inches of rain out at the landfill. But what I wanted to talk about, because a lot of the problems that we've been experiencing throughout the county lately, the bigger picture isn't just what was happening that week, but what's been happening over the past month. So on the left, you'll see a map of the county from National Weather Service, where over the past 30 days, our normal rainfall amounts range from about 2 to 3 inches for the last 30 days. What we've actually experienced has been 10 to 15 inches. So over this last month, we have received over 5 times the amount of rain we normally receive. We've heard a lot of anecdotal stories of, this place wasn't flooded during the August storm. And this is the reason why. The ground is just super saturated at this point, where we're seeing folks that dig down 2 inches and they're already hitting groundwater. It's pretty remarkable. So that rain that we've been getting, and again, it's not really particularly a single storm, and 6.5 inches is a lot, but it's this continual soaking that we receive that's really causing a lot of the issues we've been experiencing. But as far as that 18th, 19th, when we saw a lot of the heaviest of the downpours, we received 68 phone calls at Public Works. The sheriff office received more. The emergency services received more. So, I mean, that's not the total calls we've received, but that was just at Public Works. We had 5 roads closed for high water, and we had 9 partial washouts, the worst of which was down there on Bent Pine Road. And you can see a picture there where we actually had an end section of the pipe dislodged. It was held on with a band that became dislodged during the washout occurred. So one of the things that I showed last time I was here was a map of the county with the locations that the folks had marked on our maps from our March drainage meetings. We've taken that a step further with the help of Jack Lennox's department and Frank McKenzie and mapping these locations throughout the county. So it's a little hard to see here, but the green squares on this map are the places where we, in the roads division, have experienced flooding issues. The red dots are locations that folks marked during the March meetings, and the little orange triangles are the places where we received calls from during this past storm. We're going to continue to add to these data points when we get additional storms to help begin painting a bigger picture of, where do we concentrate our efforts for systemic approaches to addressing drainage throughout the county. And we have this available not just in this version, but also in a GIS version that's actually interactive, that you can go in and click on these sites to receive information. Some of the dots you'll see up there are someone will call and say, hey, we've got flooding on Texas Road. We might receive 2 or 3 calls. So you'll see 1 dot for Texas Road, but if you clicked on it, you'd see that there were 3 different people, basically, with data points within that dot. So I'm going to go over some of our larger, more high-profile problems that we experienced over this past storm. One of the biggest ones is Pemberton Drive at Anderson Mill Pond, that road over top with water. What's interesting about this is during the August storm, this road did not overtop. The state highway upstream of us overtopped, we did not. And the cause was that big yellow piece of plastic you see in the middle. It was a paddle boat that had gotten lodged in the outfall pipe leading from the upstream side of the dam to the downstream side. And once that water level rose, the property owner tried to get out there. And it's important to point out the upstream side of Anderson Mill Pond is privately owned. The pond's privately owned. The outfall's privately owned. The upstream embankment is privately owned. We're having discussions now with that property owner. It's recently changed hands in the last couple of years, and they're amenable to giving the county control over that upstream area, because this could potentially have turned into another Barron Creek. But again, that yellow paddle boat got stuck in the pipe all the way to the right-hand side. And as you can see, it caused a significant amount of damage to the pipe. Even right now, that pipe is probably only flowing about 60% full because it's just gotten bent in. Once the water level drops a little bit more, we're going to get out there with our pipe saw and cut that thing off to try to get a less restricted opening. But even after we pulled the boat out, the water dropped down, we looked in there, and there was the carcass of a snapping turtle stuck in that pipe. So we had to pull that out. We looked in the other end, there's what looks like, other debris somewhere trapped in the middle of that pipe that we're continuing to work with to try to get that water flowing out. Pratt Road flooded again. We had to remove the pipe in question that led from Pratt Road to the culvert between Pratt Road and Pemberton Drive. And again, they still saw a lot of the same amount of flooding. We do have that drainage study. We've finished our review. We've sent comments back to the consultant, and they expect to have that revised draft of the drainage study to us by the end of the month. When we get that back, we'll certainly forward that on to council once we make sure all the questions are answered and they present a report that provides everyone with all of the proper information.
I'm assuming part of that, they'll be reviewing the stormwater pond for the Hunters Mill addition?
Correct, yes, the entire drainage area that basically discharges through Pratt, into Pemberton, through Nistdale, all of that, Hunters Mill, that's all being looked at.
Yeah, because even as everything now is starting to subside, if you go by there, it's still.
The water level?
Yeah, it's still right at the top.
And it's that water's not going back into the ground right now. One thing that's interesting to note, if you look over the picture on the far right, there was some discussion during the August storm of, hey, put another pipe in underneath that driveway that doesn't have a pipe. And what I wanted to point out was the picture on the right is that driveway that doesn't have the pipe. So in the cases when you see flooding on Pratt Road here in the area we've seen problems with, the water level still doesn't back up that high. And that was one of the reasons why we didn't feel like putting a pipe in at that location was really going to help anything, because the water just doesn't back up that high. It would have to, you would see significantly higher levels of flooding to get to that point. And it's just not something we're seeing, which is, again, just trying to show, what our reasoning was behind trying to concentrate on efforts on places that were actually going to make a difference. Downstream of Pratt Road, I'd like to show you a quick little video. This is the swale behind Nithsdale where all of Pratt Road and this area drains to. As you can see, this is the water that's running behind Nithsdale. And when the calls for make the pipes bigger, bigger swales, we have to start downstream, because if we make all of these pipes in Pratt area bigger, the impact to these downstream property owners is only going to get worse. What you see upstream is what it used to look like before the August storm, and as you can see, that water has just eroded the channel behind these folks' houses. They've put in some riprap to try to protect that area, but again, I just want to give you an idea of when you're making these improvements, you have to start downstream and work your way up, otherwise you're going to significantly impact other people's properties.
Does it drain to the river?
What's that?
Does it drain to the river?
Yes, from here it goes onto the river. Yeah, that red line you see on the right is the path of the water. This video was taken almost right behind where that red line starts on the north side, and then again it makes its way down. And that image of the red line was taken from the first draft of that drainage study to show where they're recommending we make improvements to.
Does the drainage from West Nistdale go over to this ditch here?
Mm-hmm. Everything in Nistdale basically drains to Royal Mile, and then from Royal Mile, it heads out to the river via this swale ditch system.
Is this part of the study that they're doing?
Yes, it is.
This is all inclusive, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Another area, this area didn't get a whole lot of attention, but this is Burning Tree Circle, just off of Riverside Drive. It's a big loop basically. On the north side is where you're seeing all of this flooding at. They had about 1.5 feet of water standing on top of their road, and the south side, which if you look in the middle picture where we have our GAT vac at, that's actually what the south side of the road looked like, while the north side looked had all the flooding, and that's because there's a drain pipe that goes through the middle of the block through a private drainage swale that's basically overgrown, or not a drainage swale, a pipe rather, that's been overgrown. We got in there with the GAT vac and were able to clear out a large root mat, a lot of pine shats, a lot of yard clippings that people just, it eventually makes its way into these inlets and into the pipes and are clogging them up. The two little pictures on the lower left, where that pipe went through the middle of the block, there were 2 yard inlets. One had a fence built directly on top of it. The other, someone had bricked up over top the inlet. So that was closed up. We had to get permission from private property owners, since this was a private drainage easement, to get in there and access that. We were eventually able to. Two of the three gave us permission. But the picture on the left, on the upper left with all the water, that's what it looked like in the 18th storm, but that's also what it looked like Tuesday morning, or Monday morning. So from the rain we got just this past weekend, that's what it looked like. At 8 a.m., by 3 p.m., once we had gotten the pipe open, is the picture you see on the right, where we had gotten it all drained out. So we are out there actively trying to address these drainage issues. I'd like to talk about the Nanacoke corridor. Nanacoke Road, we're seeing a lot of flooding along this area. The first section is Nanacoke Road at Willow Creek. The middle picture is what the flooding we're seeing on the state seeing on Nanacoke Road. And basically, all of that water from the north on those farm fields is draining to the south. It's crossing Nanacoke Road and ending up going down Willow Creek Drive. There's no swale system in place to collect that water. There is one pipe under Nanacoke Road at that point, but we feel like there needs to be more and have it also relocated. We'd like to make improvements to the drainage on Willow Creek Drive from Nanacoke Road through Willow Creek. It makes its way to the river. There'd have to be some systemic improvements, again, downstream and up. But we're working with the state. We've met with them this week to have discussions about this location. And what you can see on the middle picture is what Willow Creek looked like during the storm, and to the right is the picture of today, where you can see the water and the flooding. And this isn't just all from the flooding. This is the groundwater seeping up through the roads. It's just causing a tremendous amount of damage. And we might have to go in here and put an under drain system in for the road to get this water moving off. But our infrastructure is getting damaged from these storms as well. Further down Nanacoke Road at North Upper Ferry, we saw one of our roads closed. The area that says flooding was where we saw the road flooded at. There's a swale system there that drains to Nanacoke Road and then heads to the south. The yellow line is a ditch that has a lot of vegetation and sediment buildup. We've discussed with the state about getting that cleaned out. And at the red section, there is an old driveway pipe crossing. There's no longer a house there, but the pipe is undersized, and there was some millings that were used to shore up that location, and those millings have since clogged up part of that pipe. So we're working with the state to either get that pipe completely removed so there isn't a house there, or because there isn't a house there, or we're looking to have that pipe completely removed altogether. It's interesting to note, for the folks in the audience that aren't going to follow this conversation, the Barrington Ridge emails that we're going across, this is the location where Barrington Ridge eventually drains through. So it heads from the north side and eventually crosses right here and heads further south, where this water also heads to. Okay.
How's the cooperation with the state of Maryland? Because I know all along Nanacoke Road, you can see just where there's a lot of work that's needed.
It's been good. They've got a lot of work on their hands as well, but they've been very receptive. We called up the state highway week before last, and they came out last week. We got to set a meeting up. They came out to the roads division, and we met with them and went through these issues as well as some others that I'm going to present and talk about. But yeah, they're aware of them. The other location that was flooded was Nanacoke Road at Ketchpenny Road. On the upper right-hand corner, you can see what Ketchpenny looked like, and I kind of have some arrows to show where that area was flooded at. Downstream of that, the water was going just as fast as it could through their pipe at Ketchpenny. We believe that pipe may be undersized, especially for the size of the storms that we're now seeing in the area. So we're asking the state to take a look at increasing that size. Whenever you add a new pipe, whenever you increase the pipe size on a state system, it has to go through the Office of Highway Hydraulics in Baltimore. They handle the drainage on all state roads throughout the state. So there's some work involved. It's a slow process, but we've started the requests up by talking to them on the local level for our first ask. So as I mentioned, we've met with State Highway, discussed the improvements. We've asked for a possible study of the entire Nanticoke Road corridor. It's my recommendation to think about including this in our consolidated transportation plan letter that we give to the state every year, asking them, say, hey, we want you to look at a drainage study for the Nanticoke corridor. I understand, when you get down to areas of bivalve, you're not quite sure what to do, but what we're looking for is if we can identify where the low points are on Nanticoke Road, we can work with the state to try to get them access for the water getting from their road through our properties and out to the rivers, because it's affecting not just our roads and private citizens, but everyone. So that's what we think would help trying to spur the wheels on to getting some more political pressure for them to move a study forward for that whole area. We've also requested assistance from them for clearing Peggy Neck Branch. There's a lot of debris built up by the Salisbury bypass. The upper picture on the right shows the location where we're talking about. It's basically right at the railroad lines between where the Purdue Mill is and the bypass. And as you can see on the bottom picture, all of that sediment that's been washing off of the bypass is holding back the flow in Peggy Neck Branch, and we really need to get that area cleaned out. It's tough work. It's work on the state level that we're facing on the county level of trying to get equipment into places that doesn't want equipment in it. But we've told them, look, this is our #1 ask, because that really is holding back a lot of areas. Some of the other work that I showed you on Nanticoke is going to require some engineering. This is just simply shovels in the ground to get that soil and sediment out that's holding back the flow along Peggy Neck Branch and a relief flooding for the folks that live on the old Ocean City corridor. And then next week, we are meeting with, actually no, not next week, tomorrow, we're meeting with State Highway and Councilman Dodd out at Maryland 350 Mount Herman Road and the Adkins Farm to talk about drainage issues out there as well. And we had some preliminary discussion with State Highway about this issue when they stopped by for a visit. And that's kind of our greatest hits from this past storm. If there's any other specific locations you'd like to discuss, I will do my best to answer them.
We had an issue in Walston Switch. I understand a lot of bamboo was cut and deposited in the ditch, stopped the tiles up. Did you contact the landowner? Did anybody bother to contact the landowner about that?
I can check on that. I know we sent the grade all out and got that area scooped out.
And then there's a tandem truckload of bamboo that was in the ditch.
I believe we had to go back twice. We scooped it out and then some more came floating down and had to go back a second time and scooped out some more.
Apparently that bamboo is located on probably a couple pieces of property. I think it would be wise if we could send a letter to the property owners to state that they shouldn't be cutting it and putting it in the ditch.
Yep.
I mean, that's Beaver Run Tax Ditch. Drains everything north of Walston Switch up through most of the Delaware line.
We can certainly do that.
Yeah, well, I say greatest hits, all those hits are in my district. So, I mean, that's and Pratt Road, I found it ironic I think it was the 18th, John and I were kind of driving around and talking on the phone and drove through Pratt Road, and, the Upper Ferry Road was closed down and Pemberton Drive was closed down, so the only way the people in John's neighborhood could get out was through Pratt Road, which was kind of ironic considering, the state Pratt Road had been in. So, Pratt Road was the best road in that region, strangely enough. So, it's a tough situation. I mentioned to you last time you were here, about like Levin-to-Shield and Pemberton, and I understand that there are problems, with drainage being blocked up, but on some portions of Pemberton, there is no drainage system. I mean, between probably, it would be Crooked Oak and probably Wacawacan Drive, there's not much in terms of drainage. It doesn't seem, there's not many ditches or anything like that. And Levin to Shield doesn't have much in terms of drainage. And Levin to Shield was, on Monday was, there were 3 or 4 places on that road that were.
And there still are some places out there,
Yeah, so, so I understand dealing with the, where the drainage systems need to be upgraded, but what about, these roads, these places that don't have any sort of drainage already? I mean, I didn't hear anything, 4 weeks ago when we talked about this, about, you said you keep an eye on these, they flooded twice since we've talked before. So are there plans to, try to retrofit those areas with drainage, or however you have to do it?
Yes. Yes, we've been out specifically to the Levin to Shield area. I'll talk on that. There's, as you mentioned, there's running ditches along the side of that road. Doesn't make much sense because the water wants to drain across the road. So if we put swales along Levin to Shield up, it would have to go to someplace to get it across. And at that point, to get it basically it all wants to get into Mitchell Pond. Is ultimately where the grade wants to go. And for that, we are going to need to acquire some type of easements and permissions from the property owners between Levin to Shield and Brick Kiln to get the water to those directions. And that is something that we are starting to look at. Okay, what place makes the most sense? What place is going to have the least impact? I can tell you off the top of my head, that farm field between Brick Kiln and Levin, from a ease of construction standpoint, that makes the most sense to get it across there. There's a lot of wooded areas in between those 2 locations. We are also considering, there's, I believe it's Mitchell's nursery out there. They have an outfall that eventually leads to Mitchell Pond. Marshall's. The thought is maybe if we can have some discussion with them, could we tie in our swale into their system to then lead to Mitchell Pond? So there are, we're discussing our options about how to address these locations. 'Cause, you're right, that they've flooded again. We recognize that we need to do something, and we're looking around to see where does the water want to go. Because that's going to be the easiest thing for us, is to get it where it wants to go already.
And I've also, had calls from private landowners along some of those areas saying, what can we do to help? Can we go dig a ditch alongside the road? And I said, no, don't be digging stuff in county right away. I mean, I understand the county doesn't want you to do that, but how do you work with the private individuals that, want to do something on their property or want to assist you doing something, on the county road next to their property?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that we can certainly do is stake out some locations if it's something that they want to, if they want to build a big pond on their property or dig some type of rain garden. We can certainly go out and stake out the limits of our right of way so that they're not digging in our right of way. And then, as always, keeping ditches clean, keeping them clear, not putting trash and sediment. I can tell you, we went through and we're looking at some of the areas in Kilburnie, and it looked like there was easily some places 30 years of pine shats that had been built up. And some of them, it was clear that they had just been recently dumped. People were dumping into the private drainage soils. So keeping those areas clear really helps.
So you mentioned Barrington Ridge, and obviously we've had some emails on that. So in that situation where an HOA is maybe gone defunct, where they don't have the ability to collect money and take care of their drainage system. I know you've talked about legislation, but I spoke with someone who used to work in Public Works, and they said that right now the county has the ability to go out and do that work and then assess the people in that homeowners association already. Is that true? I mean, can someone request, say, hey, our private drainage system is, we need it cleaned, we don't have the money to take care of it. Can the county do that and then assess the residents currently?
I'm not aware of that, how that would work. I'm not aware of the Public Works having that authority. That was where we were proponing the idea of the Urban Service Commission.
Yeah, I know we talked about doing that, and I think we should move forward with that. I was told by someone that used to work there that, it was a couple of years ago with a different homeowners association, oh yeah, the county can come out there and do that, but then they'll just charge the homeowners association, or charge the people in the homeowners association. So I guess maybe we can talk privately about who told me that and about that sort of stuff. But, I mean, I know there's folks that have a large interest in doing that, you know, that, again, these homeowner associations, they can't collect the money, but they have serious drainage problems, and they're just looking, you know, to how they can partner with the county to get it done, but they'll pay for it. So, so the sooner we can make that easier to do, I think we should probably work on that. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Dallas, the governor, in light of what happened in Ellicott City, I know that the governor declared that as an emergency, what's the term for the state of emergency? And of course, that entails funding. So are you seeing any signs from the state that they're interested in helping local jurisdictions begin funding local jurisdictions in any way whatsoever, with grants or anything? Because I believe this is probably something that's pervasive throughout the state. I don't know, but I'm guessing it appears as such.
What I'll say is specifically for drainage-related issues, we haven't seen many grants coming our way. We did apply for the grant for Pratt Road. We did not get that grant.
How come? What happened?
They sent a very nice generic non-explanation letter of thanks for applying. We've got a lot of priorities, and please keep us in mind next time you have an issue and send us another grant application.
What department did you file with?
I believe that was through the Department of Natural Resources. It was one of the grants that got forwarded to us from, it was one of the delegates that had sent us the email when all of the Pratt Road issues came up about last August. We got 4 or 5, and we looked at them and discussed them with the state agencies that administer the grants. And there, out of the 4, there was one that said, yeah, I think this is your best shot at getting a grant, and it came back as a no. There appears to be a lot of state money for water quality issues, WIP projects, putting in bioretention swales, but there doesn't appear to be a lot of grant opportunities for flooding. You know, when this whole stormwater thing first started, the priority was loss of life, loss of property, then the environment. And at some point, the attitude has changed to where it's almost loss of life, then environment, then loss of property. You know, and I can cite examples of where we can't go in and clean out old ditches now because they're labeled as a wetland. So we can't go in and clean things out that we used to be able to clean. You know, it is what it is. We try to work within the system. But again, from what I've seen, a lot of the grants available out there are more for water quality related issues, nutrient and phosphorus reductions, or nitrogen and phosphorus reductions, and less so much of, hey, we want to get this water off our property and moving. There seems to be money available for coastal resiliency, for sea level rise, but you know, everyone talks about, okay, well, global warming or sea level rise, and what we're seeing is that impact is, well, what happens when it rains more? You know, that's whatever the cause, it's raining more, and that's the challenge of, okay, has anybody on the state or federal level thought of what aid they can provide to us on the local level of what to do to help us address rain?
I think this could be a fallout too from the recession, and the fact of the fact that the state had pulled back on highway user revenue. I think, you know, overall you had counties that were losing money, and you had the state that was backing out. I think of a lot of these programs. Soil conservation, I know, seemed to back out of a lot of ditch management, and I believe that this is all what you're seeing in the culmination of programs that were disbanded, and not taking into consideration that maybe there might be a problem a few years down the road when you ignore the maintenance of your ditches and your waterways. Just my take. I don't know.
Well, I have to agree with you, John. You know, when we lost that $7 million a year, wasn't it? $7.5 million a year in highway revenues. You know, that we had to make that up some kind of way, so it took it away from maintenance of the ditches and maintenance of it. So it's kind of the trickle down effect of like you say, the recession.
Yeah. Well, Any other questions? All right.
Well, I have one
yes,
thing.
Sure, Joe.
You were gonna send or have sent a letter, about Mr. Tom White on Line Road, out in White, to the state of Delaware, and he asked if the council would also send that letter. Are you familiar with that?
Mhm.
I think he,
Yeah, he had, we had kind of reached an impasse with Delaware, and I just recommended that he, send a letter and say, hey, to powers above us, asking them to communicate to Delaware. What I told him too was eventually Delaware is gonna have a flooding problem on their side that heads our direction, and when that comes in, we'll certainly remember Mr. White and say, hey, help us out over here, and we can help you out where you need some help with as well.
he has a letter that he would like the county to, the council to, send, back in his, I guess you sent him that letter, a copy of that letter, is that right?
He had indicated he needed some help with the letter, and so
I'll get the letter to the council.
printed it out for him, and
It's basically asking Delaware to clean the ditch out. Thank you for helping him with that, by the way.
You're welcome.
Great.
And thank you for all the work your folks have done out there in the trying conditions, but, we recognize the work that they do is important, and they're out there hard, so we don't mean to complain about everything, but we certainly are hearing it from folks, so we're trying to let you know, so
Yeah,
thank you for everything. So.
We're trying to get to everyone as best we can.
I pulled down, I was going down Pemberton Road and Pemberton Drive, and Lee Alton's out there about waist deep in water. It was actually from the picture that you had where you had the beige boulders or whatever they were on the side of the road, saving that road, which evidently worked very well. So he was out there and just, going right at it. And your documentation and your whole presentation is excellent.
Thank you.
It looks like, you're really paying attention, I think, of every issue that the citizens are trying to bring to the county. I really like where you're headed with it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
The next item we have on the agenda is a sale of land preservation easements. Here you are. Mrs. Smith, how are you? Fine. Good to see you. If you could state your name and your title.
I'm Gloria Smith, and I'm a planner with the Planning and Zoning Department.
Okay.
And I'm here tonight to talk about the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Program. It's ag application submission year, and we have 4 new applications that have been submitted to be reviewed. They have already been reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and determined to be in accordance with the County Comprehensive Plan and the new priority preservation area that was a part of that plan. Last Wednesday night, the Ag Preservation Advisory Board met to review the applications and determine that they meet or exceed the state's minimum criteria for size and for soils. So the next step is to schedule a public hearing before the council, because you have to take those 2 recommendations and forward a recommendation. Also, we have to have your recommendation to go along with the applications when they go up to Annapolis. This is a voluntary program, and for about the past 10 years, we've had more volunteers than the state has had money. But this year, it's my understanding that the governor included a nice chunk of money in the budget to help maybe clean up a little bit of backlog of applications. I'm not sure how far it's going to go. It's going to depend on appraisals and formulas and the size of the applications that we have. And we have some small farms, and we have some that are larger that want to participate.
Okay. Any questions, council members? Where will we go from here as far as what we need to do?
I think Laura told me that the next available date so that we can meet the advertising schedule with the Daily Times is July the 3rd.
Okay. At 6 p.m.
July 3rd? Okay. Any questions from council?
You heard this question earlier, and I brought it up, I think, last meeting. Is this going to take these properties off the tax rolls?
No. What the state does is buys the development rights. The landowner still owns the farm and has all of the farming rights to it. Typically, it's my understanding, I'm not an expert in the property taxes, but it's my understanding that the agricultural rate is the lowest tax rate anyway. But this will prevent these farms from becoming subdivisions,
Okay.
provided the landowners get an offer that they're willing to accept.
Are they, when they do these properties, and I know this has been done a lot, of course, they really pushed on it when we had the building boom. Did they go out and make sure these properties are even suitable to have subdivisions built on them before they,
That's where the soils criteria comes into play. They are, and they ask us with the application, one of the things that the Ag Advisory Board does is rates and ranks these applications to say to the state, okay, we're submitting 12 applications, that's our limit this year, and this is how we want you to dole the money out. This is first, this is second, this is third, and some of the things that they look at are, you know, do we have farms that are just barely, they meet the state's minimum criteria for soils, but are they just barely developable? Because we've just been talking about, or you all have just been talking about stormwater, and do we have some that meet the minimum criteria on paper, but are they flooded a lot of the year, or are they flooded during heavy rain so that they really wouldn't be developable anyway? And that's what, one of the things that the Ag Advisory Board members, they're some of our younger farmers, but they know a lot about the applications that we've got, where they're located, who's farming what, does it produce, and the state keeps telling us that they want them ranked so that they are buying the development rights from the best farms, that these are the ones that are developable soils, not marshland.
okay. Sounds good.
Any questions? Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. Next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2019 budget work session. I believe, Levin, you're going to assist us with this tonight. What we're trying to do is just sort of get a final review of where we are in the fiscal year 19 budget, so that on the 14th we'll have a more exact idea of what we're going to vote on without too many surprises.
All right.
Oh, good, I got all my baby pictures off. All right, that's the latest copy, John.
Okay. So what we have on the board there is a spreadsheet. At the top of the spreadsheet, you see department cuts that have been proposed. In some of those areas, you'll see where there's a zero by that. That means that it was something that was proposed, and in discussions, not only among council members, but also with the executive branch, we were reviewing what would remain as a cut or what would not. So this is sort of a final total of what we have of cuts. The grand total being $1,150,929. Part of that, as you'll see down there at the bottom, is the Board of Education one-time only transfer of $750,000, which was taken out of the one-time only category. And then the distribution of funds that the council would like to recommend to the executive branch involves those four different categories there. The additions, what the council is trying to do is make sure that the recommendations on the additions will match what the cuts are, and that's where we are today. So it is open for discussion with the council as far as where we are as a whole. That's how it's zeroed out. If anybody, I will open the floor to any council member that would like to particularly address any one issue. If not, this is what we'll go to the table with for a vote on June 14th.
We had one discussion about the sheriff's cars, and Councilman Davis was concerned about the SRO use of the cars. And I think there was some discussion that the council might like for the sheriff's department to use the cars, or to fully fund. We would like cars used for the road.
That's
Help
correct.
me out there, Bernie.
Instead of putting them in the SCROs, use the money to purchase road-ready cars.
Okay. So I think what I would like to suggest is that we go ahead and fund the cars, and then maybe send a letter of, to the sheriff's department suggesting that they do that. You okay with that?
That's good.
Opinion?
Okay. And that would be a suggestion, because we don't manage the sheriff's department.
Right,
You know, so-
as opposed to a recommendation,
Yeah.
just simply be a suggestion. Is the council okay with that? All right, we can certainly get that letter out and have them do with it as they choose.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we should all recognize is, this is a kind of a committee put together list that I don't think any of us are individually necessarily thrilled with, but I think on the whole, I think it's something that's acceptable from my perspective, at least. I mean, I think we've worked together pretty well, and I know there's been discussions, and I hope it's something that we can have consensus that this would be workable, at least. So, again, even though some of us might not be completely thrilled with every single item, I'm generally okay with it.
I mean, is that, it's acceptable, but?
No, it's acceptable, I'm done. Unless you say something, I'm not gonna.
Well, there is a possibility. I've discussed with some of the other council members about the hazmat funds, and we're not sure whether the hazmat funds are really necessary that they have put in the budget. We have a hazmat unit, and we talked about it in the last session, where we have a hazmat unit in Salisbury, the city of Salisbury itself, which services the surrounding area. And although we were talking about decontamination units, I've spoken with a number of people about decontamination units, and apparently they're old trailers that were dedicated or given to these different fire departments a number of years ago, and they've deteriorated. Not that they've ever been used, but they were given to the fire departments by the state. And we're talking about replacing items that were over 12 years old that have never been used for the most part. And whether it's necessary to do this really becomes the issue. We're replacing things that have never been used for the most part in these volunteer fire companies. And I really don't think it's necessary. The decontamination comes from hazmat in the city takes care of it. If there are any issues which require units to be used, insurance is paid for these things generally from the violator or the person that has these issues. And so for that reason, I'd like to see it back in as a cut.
John, you're referencing the $27,000 for the 3 hazmat trailers, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. We can certainly put that back in for discussion. I would like, if we could, Mr. Shipley, would you have any background on this as far as the hazmat units, and you could help enlighten us?
Yes, I did speak to Chief Morris of the Chiefs Association,
Mm-hmm.
and he indicated to me that one of the major concerns was for the hazmat, as far as the decons were, is the replacement of some of the level A suits that are carried on those. Okay, that's when you look like an astronaut with an SCBA with the backpack on, and they have aging equipment that they're concerned about, and they wanted to rotate the stuff that was old into a training aspect and replace it.
I believe this was a line item referencing trailers more specifically, And the reason I ask is because when I saw that, I was wondering whether, I'm not quite sure how many, I know Councilman Dodd may be able to help elaborate on it. I wasn't sure how many hazmat issues really occur in Wicomico County. And when one may occur, if it's not a circumstance whereas those particular trailers could be shared, even if the city of Salisbury has such a trailer, I don't know what the sense of urgency might be where if the trailer couldn't be borrowed or, you know, some type of an offset created with the city of Salisbury where they would send that trailer to whatever location in the county it might be needed. Or even if there was one station in Wicomico County where we had a trailer and that then again was shared among other agencies.
Currently, the way a hazmat incident would go down, just to give a brief explanation, is we would receive a call in the 911 center, and fire apparatus, normal fire engines and support apparatus would be sent to the incident. Once the OIC gets on the scene, they're the ones that make the determination of whether they're going to call the Salisbury hazmat, whether they're going to call for a decon unit, whether they're going to call people from my operation down. So it's just a deployment scheme that's always been in place. And it's up to, now, you know, if there's multiple incidents going on, of course, then there would have to be, the system would be stressed where they would be using possibly all the resources, but that's going to be incident-based.
Again, and Mr. Cannon made reference to it, how many times can you recall that we've had instances or multiple instances?
Councilman Dodd, if I could mention, he requested a report on over last year. Now, we went on 62 what we would call petroleum spills, that was last year, and then we had roughly 35 gas leaks. There was no biohazard information, and there were no explosions that went on. And unfortunately, I was...
Any chlorine leaks, or...?
That would be the bio that we're talking about.
No, I thought, when you said bio, I thought you were talking about human.
No, we're talking about that kind of thing. Now, and you also asked us to try to drill down in the size of these things, and I didn't have enough time to do that. Okay, but those are the aggregate numbers of what we went on.
And were decontamination suits used or anything along those lines?
I can't answer the number of times that I don't have that information.
Okay.
You mentioned that the fire crews go to the scene first, and I know that other counties have what you call a hazmat box. So they gather enough information to know it's a hazardous materials incident. How come we're not at that level yet?
It's just the SOGs of the fire service that we're following.
Because I know for years the fire service has been talking about going to box alarms, which, you know, Station 14
There's
is
an experiment
already
going on.
experimented. Salisbury wanted to do a pilot several years ago. But when you do gather enough information, you can dispatch automatically
I would agree
the
with you, yes.
resources needed.
Right.
I think at some point we need to get to that level.
And I believe the Chiefs Association, in concert with my office, with the box alarm experiment that you mentioned, which is going on in Sharptown currently, to move in, I think, to Hebron, actually.
Okay. Mrs. Hurley, got a comment?
I was just going to suggest that we do have a representative here from the Volunteer Firefighters Association, so perhaps she may want to speak on her experience.
Have a seat.
Again, Shanda Perry, Wicomico County Firemen's Association.
Get closer to the mic.
Sorry.
Yeah, just make sure you have the mic. Yeah, great. Thanks.
Mr. Hall, just to address, and I've heard you say it a couple of times, about when have these incidents happened, when have we used these decon trucks or trailers. First of all, we're not asking to replace the trailers themselves. We are asking to replace the equipment, meaning any of your absorbents, any of your decon suits, anything that's used to clean up not only the scene, but we're talking about these decon units are used to clean up our personnel who potentially, maybe not knowing it's a hazmat incident upon arrival, like you said, and again, I agree with the change happening to it being a hazmat incident and the right equipment being dispatched originally. That's not happening yet, so we have to be proactive to keep our firefighters and EMTs and paramedics safe. When they do get to a scene, if there is a possible contamination, those suits, those powders, those liquids that are used to clean that up is what those trailers are holding. Those items do expire, That's what we're asking for the money for, is to replace expired items that are on those trailers that the fire departments throughout the last years that they've had those have been replacing out of funds that they are putting out, whether it be obviously other money we receive from the county, but fundraising and things like that. So we were asking for the extra because it has come to our attention that almost everything is now expiring. It's no different, and you said, well, when do you ever use that? Let me give you an example of a change that's happened recently. For years and years, we've used EpiPens on our ambulances for adults and pediatrics. The price of those has gone from a couple $100 to well over $600 a pen. I've never used one in 25 years, but they have to be on that ambulance. We've made a change with MIMS and the doctors and the associations to change that so that we can now use Epidraw, which means we actually take the vial and anybody can use a syringe. It costs about $3 for us to do that now. It took us 20-some years to get there. So when you say, why do we need that? We've never had the incident. That kind of cuts a little deep because I think you guys have to be expecting it to happen. That's part of what we walk into, whether it's knowingly or unknowingly, every time we go to an accident when we don't know if a tractor and trailer has the correct placard cards on or not. We don't know what we're walking into. So my opinion is the equipment on those trailers needs to be replaced.
Well, I understand that. And I understand the chemicals do expire every 2 to 4 years.
And
which means that we should be replacing those chemicals every 2 to 4 years, or we should be using another source, like the city's to take care of those instances.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the city that you're speaking of has the hazmat unit, which would go in and take care of the spills. What we have are decon trailers, which are the afterwards for the personnel and cleaning up our personnel, not necessarily the scene. It is not my understanding that Salisbury has that. They may have some of that, but not enough if it was an actual mass incident, which is what we're talking about.
And as I understand it, you work cooperatively with the city with that. The city,
as far as I know,
and
the hazmat unit is made available when requested through the city, as is the other 3 stations that have the decon units would work and go to wherever, whether it was in the city limits or in the county. I believe they've even been used to go over into, because of the Sharptown and the locality, have been asked to go over into Dorchester County to help as well, which they have a mutual, thing with Dorchester that they do.
I'm not necessarily opposed to looking at ways to maybe revamp how we do some of this stuff. I mean, maybe that is what we need to look at. I do think that if we have the situation as it exists today, and these things are expiring, I think we should fund it this year. And if we want to, work with the volunteer firefighters in the city of Salisbury to figure out a different way to do it, if there's concern that there's waste or things like that, then I think, that's something to do. But trying, saying that we want it to work differently and not fund this year and just let these expired things continue out there, I don't know is the wisest way to deal with public safety. So
kind of put us behind the 8 ball if we don't have it.
So just for the record, John Hall, you did it. You got me to argue against a budget cut. So before your time on the council, you've achieved one of your goals. So good job. So.
I have a question, Shanda, because I haven't seen your trailer. Mr. Shipley mentioned the Class A hazmat suits. Is that what needs to be replaced? Do you carry those on your trailer?
My company doesn't personally have the trailer. I would have to contact Billy or Joe would know more about that, and I apologize for not having those answers. I don't personally have one of those trailers, so I can't speak for, and I'm sure not everything on the trailer is expiring. Like I said, there's always a continual, I'm sure they have some suits that are this year, and there might be a couple of suits for next year, and they try to space out their funding, I'm sure, as they've been replacing things. So I can't speak for those other 3 companies.
I was thinking Parsons, you're in Powellville.
Right.
I keep thinking you're in Parsons.
And there is, in locality reasoning, there is one on the west side, the east side, and then Delmar, I believe, is.
It's the fire grounds that they operate under, is 1, 2, 3.
Right, that's where they're located, so it's not that everybody has one, and they're obviously shared, within your regions, and then again, if you needed two of them in one place, they would be requested to go. I can try to get that information for you just to kind of give you an idea of, I guess, a yearly budget that they're looking at for replacements, to see how much it really is every year based on if something's 2 years or 4 years, or maybe some things are 6 years to expire. I mean, everything has a different date, manufacturer date on it.
Do you have a question, Joe?
Not for this, I got something else, so.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, John, because, I mean, typically what you are really saying is, why should we replace anything if it's actually really not being used? And if it is a case where there's an emergency, is there another way to more efficiently set up some type of a system, whereas one station could maybe be the focus of this unit, and it could easily be distributed to where any emergency might be. So that's the reason, I think, for the concern. We're looking at purchasing 3 of these. Maybe we would only need 1 and centrally located in the Salisbury area. But if that's something, I guess, maybe for another year.
Well, you know, it's interesting because, of course, we're all in favor of public safety, and, you know, that's why we're here. But it comes up this year, and it's interesting that Mr. Kilmer would say that he's in favor of this, but here it just has happened to come up this year. Could it be postponed to next year where we go through it more thoroughly is my question, and present it next year, because, you know, we do have these expiring products, but they still expire next year as well as this year. So, you know, are we gaining anything by doing it this year without going through it thoroughly, and vetting it thoroughly like it should be? How'd I do?
That's a good point. I was just saying, make the cut for a 1 year, as a 1 year delay, John. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
All right, if we did that and we had, that would remove the 27,000 from the budget. That would give us, based on this this spreadsheet, a balance of 27,000 in the plus, which would either go to the undesignated fund balance, or we may choose to add it to another department, or we may choose not to make a cut in some of the departments that are already being cut.
Right.
Is there a second part of that that you would like to see done? In other words, if we were to cut the 27,000 on the ambulance hazmat for this year, are you looking to maybe avoid a cut in another area, or would you want to add something to another department?
No, I won't open that can of worms.
You've already opened one.
So,
anyone?
Are there, I haven't been well-versed in Homeland Security lately, but are there any grants available for replacement of any of the stock that we might need?
We can look into it, yes.
Do you have a grants writer at Emergency Management?
Yes, yeah. Well, no, we don't have a grants writer. We take care of it ourselves.
Okay. Somebody that does that.
Yes.
I'm in favor of leaving it in. You know, I think the fire departments, they never know what to-
Leaving it as a cut or not?
No, not a cut. I
Not
mean,
to- not to cut it.
leave the way it is, yeah. You know, we talk about sharing some of this stuff. These guys are volunteers. They have jobs they have to work. A lot of times, they end up on an accident scene at 3 o'clock in the morning. If they get diesel fuel on them or whatever, they still got to go to work at 7:30 or 8. They got to get cleaned up. They can't wait for a fire department to come from Hebron to Parsonsburg or vice versa, you know, so they can end up going to their day job. I'm for leaving that money where it's at.
Is that what they would use this for?
I'm the one that's always wanting to cut.
Is this what they would use it for, to clean diesel off them? Don't they have uniforms on?
Well, the analogy I make is, have you seen the little, what do you call it, swimming pool scenario where you see these guys walking through, and that's what they're doing. They're spraying them and they're decontaminating the suit that was exposed to them.
So it's not as if they're going to be decontaminating the individual so they get the diesel fuel off him. It's actually for the suit more so than that.
You can have the suit on, but you can still get, you know, they run up.
There's level A and level B. There's
Right.
level B is coveralls
Yeah.
with a mask.
Okay, all right. Well,
Should we get a consensus?
I was trying to save it for you, John.
I know you were.
I'd like to
Thank you
see,
very much.
I'd like to salvage what we were looking at with
Right.
SWED, but,
Right.
you know, I would like to do that, but I don't.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I was just told that should be 21,000. There's 7,000 apiece for the trailers.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a mathematical error.
It's a good thing we have,
Well, if we're not taking that anyway, then it's moot.
all right, so what's the consensus as far as this is concerned, as far as making this cut?
Well, I still would like to make the cut, of course,
Mark?
but,
Larry?
Just keep it.
Joe?
Keep it in.
Ernie?
Keep it.
All right, we'll keep it. All right, so as it is right now, nothing has changed in this. Is there anything else that anyone else would like to look at? Joe?
On the airport, I noticed we had discussions about, sorry, John. We had discussions about removing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you,
The
Mr.
whole
Chair.
funding at one point, because we really didn't know what the money was going to be spent on, but Wayne said that he would bring information to us of how you were going to spend this $350,000. Of course, they've got it cut back to $260, so.
Yeah, I included that in an email that I sent Laura, how we would go about doing that.
Could you present it to us now, or could you explain it to us in public, what you're going to do with that money? Yeah.
Absolutely.
What Joe's referring to is initially the airport was budgeted for $350,000, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And it's been reduced, well, we've put a cut in here of $90,000 to that appropriation.
Yeah, what I discussed with Laura this morning is that we would designate, and we'll give you a list of the accounts that would be eligible to receive. This is almost like grant funding, Joe. That's the way I'm approaching this. And we would limit those accounts to those accounts that are necessary for the operation of the airport grounds and the airport terminal. And to be eligible to receive that funding, we have a weekly airport meeting. Councilman Hall attends that meeting, Matt Creamer attends that meeting, I'm there, Dawn's there, and Matt, who's our accountant at the airport, is there. And what we would do is on a weekly basis, if there was a proposal from the airport to utilize part of that funding for a particular expenditure, that it would be approved at that meeting by myself and Councilman Hall, so that both the executive branch and the council would have representation for the allocation and spending of those funds. So that way, it wouldn't just go over to the airport as a lump sum.
Would Councilman Hall confer with the council before he made that decision, or would that just be up to him?
I'll leave that entirely to you, however you all want to handle that.
Not necessarily, but if you'd wish, I certainly will, if you think that it's going to change it'll change anything with the council. You know, these are, in some cases, these are not major expenditures. that we're
We
talking
understand,
about.
yeah.
You know, for instance, they had some roof problems out at the airport. And do you think the council would like to be aware of the roof problems?
Well, yeah, we probably would want to know if the roof's leaking.
John, you act like you've
We
never
have
sat.
leaking roofs. When the GOD leaks, you know, the council's not necessarily aware of it, except for certain buckets laying
Yeah,
around.
I understand the process you're trying to follow here. That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, I realize this is a change.
We had talked about taking it all out, they've taken 90,000
I
now.
realize this is a change, but what I'm attempting to do here is to give council comfort that this money will be well spent, and it will be spent on the actual operation of the airport itself, so.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, and I've probably been the one pushing among the hardest to cut that from the budget. So, again, I'd probably be happy with a larger cut, but I'll be
We
happy.
gave your name to TSA, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
His name.
Yeah, I mean, if you, I mean, would just maybe like monthly, that might be something to, just let us know how it's going. That might be the way to,
That's fine.
you know, some.
That's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be thrilled, frankly.
You know, at one time, back in the earlier days when I was on the council, everybody that served on committees kept the council updated on what was going on that committee. We find, it got away from that after a while. I don't know why we did, but we did, so. Sure. Well, you didn't. You're too secretive, Steve.
Have we, any other discussion in reference to, Joe, I know that you had begun this discussion, the 90,000 is what we put on here. Is that acceptable as it is? Okay. Any other questions for?
Yeah, I would just like to have Mr. Strasburg respond to, again, why we are cutting the 25,900 from SWED. You don't know.
That'd be me.
The TSA
And
guy.
I think Dave's here so it was a lot easier when you guys were out of town, Dave, you know, when we were cutting this money,
right.
so, yeah, it is. So this is to keep SWED at level funding. It's, I believe it's an increase of almost, you have $25,900 in increase, so this would be to keep it at level funding, so. We funded SWED at level funding for the past, I guess, 3 years. Yeah, so this would be, so that's what it is. So.
Since he's here, can he come up and defend it and say, maybe, we need this?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Would you like to, Dave?
Okay, good job.
I personally would like to see us not cut SWED, as I stated before, but, John, you and I are in the minority, right? Dave, did you want to make any comments?
Sure.
Just state.
Yeah, thank you. Dave Ryan with Salisbury Wicomico Economic Development, affectionately referred to Mr. Kilmer as SWED. I appreciate you allowing me to come up. The request we're asking for is simply to get us out there more. It's virtually every dollar in that 25.9 is extra promotion. We want to get out more and promote Wicomico County more. It just seems like every time we go somewhere, whether it's a trade show, whether it's a conference, whether it's a corporate visitation from companies that may be located here with decision-making authority somewhere else, or maybe as prospects like we were last week or the week before or even a couple weeks before that. It just seems like every time we get in front of someone face-to-face, we come back with a lead or a project or an ancillary type of development prospect. So to penetrate more organizations like the National Association of Corporate Real Estate, like the Industrial Asset Management Council, like the National Association of Industrial and Office Parks, the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland, we're participating in those in a sparingly way. We'd like to increase that. We just want to get the word out for Wicomico County. Businesses won't last forever. We've seen great changes in our economy over a long period of time. You can bet those changes will continue. Attrition's going to occur, and now's the time to get out and really get our message out there. And that's what we're trying to do with that extra money. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has. I appreciate the invitation again. And I know, and look, irregardless of the decision, we will go out there and do everything in our power with the dollars that we have, like we've always done, to increase business in Wicomico.
Yeah, I think we, when we first got on the council, and it's been true for the last few years, economic development is our #1 priority in Wicomico County. And, when we have the chance, I think, to make a contribution to what I think is one of the strongest organizations in Wicomico County pushing for this type of development, we should support that. And I would not want to see the cut here. That leads, of course, to another discussion as far as if the council would see to keep this funding in here for SWED, does anyone have an appetite to make adjustments to any of the other departments that we have on the list to compensate for that? As you said, Mark, it could get ugly, but I think that's what we have to do.
We had a nice unsatisfactory compromise worked out here, so, no one was happy. So.
But again, Dave is not asking for a lot, and it's a minimal amount, I think, to try to make a huge difference in his department. And this is the department that's been, responsible for an awful lot of change and an awful lot of growth in Wicomico County. You don't always hear about it because he doesn't publicly, promote everything.
And,
a lot of the business,
and look no further than here. We should do, and we'll do a better job of doing that. But
well, still, yeah, and you're right. But regardless of that, there's not a business in Wicomico County that doesn't know who Sweat is and who Dave Ryan is. And in the state of Maryland, it goes much further than that. So.
And I agree with you, John. I don't think there should be a sense of anxiety whether I should attend this conference in behalf of Wicomico County because.
And that's not going to happen. If there's a lead that will come back, and we're not going to let funding get in the way of good projects. It's just if we can get out there more, I think we can generate more prospects.
Well, we've said that.
So there you go.
Well,
let's get it. I guess we're going to have to get a consensus from the council. Period.
And this is not obviously a reflection, that you're doing bad work. I mean, we're trying to cut your budget from last year. It's just blunting an increase. That's so it's not that you were doing a bad job.
No, I understand that. No, I understand that. We
don't let them off the hook that easy.
We just want to promote Wicomico County more, Mr. Kilmer.
All right. Well, a consensus as to whether or not we leave the cut in. Councilman Davis.
I'm up in the air right now.
Excuse me?
I'm up in the air with it right
Okay.
now.
All right. Joe?
I'll serve on the board.
All right. What we can possibly do, give us some thought. Okay, we'll give us some thought. We review this. We have until the 14th, okay?
Well, I thought we had to.
We have to do it tonight.
Yeah, we can do it to get it settled tonight, John.
Well, we have two undecideds already.
No, I can leave it cut in. I can say that.
Okay. John?
I'd like to see us have this amount left in the budget.
You want to fund it?
Yeah, I want to
Mark?
Cut it.
You don't want to cut it? Larry?
I'm over there too.
We don't even have a consensus here. We're going to review this.
Larry?
He was undecided.
No, I said I'm
He's in the
undecided.
undecided. There's a lot of undecideds here.
2 undecideds, 2 cuts, and 2 no cuts. Man.
All right, we're gonna pass on this, and we're gonna have a decision on the 14th, okay? Which means you're gonna have to try to figure out definitively which way you want to go on this. And again, keep in mind that without anything else changing, if this is an issue we want to address, you're gonna have to look at other departments that you're gonna have to take away from.
That's my point. Where you don't
Yeah.
even take-
I understand.
Yeah, John, you want to cut it. Where do you want to take it from?
Well, that's
Give
why
us an idea.
that's.
Give us an idea, so that might help them make up their mind.
Well, we have very few areas where we could take it from. We could take it from, as you can see, we would either take it from the state's attorney, we take it from the library, we take it from roads. One of those 3 areas.
And all we hear is about ditches and crime.
I understand, but those are the 3 areas where I think if we wanted to leave.
So which of those 3 do you want to take it from, John?
Floor's open. I would say probably take it.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go this way.
All right, yeah, help me out.
We know how important sweat is, okay? We all do. I think we all agree on that, right, on here? We also know that we've got a balanced budget up here supposedly, don't we? Yeah, do we? Dave knows that we're flexible. If he gets jammed in a corner and wants to go somewhere, say something, there's no problem with coming back. We have a contingency fund. And you're not too shy to do that, right?
No. What I meant by that comment was that for a very strong prospect, we wouldn't let funding get in the way. I would definitely be back. At the same time, to generate those very strong prospects, we'd like to get out more, and we'd like to promote the county more. Otherwise, those prospects don't become quite as strong.
It's like you do have money. It's not like we're taking money away from your budget.
You know,
You do have money.
yes, sir. As you know, we have a little bit. I mean, the county funds their economic development department at $149,000, $150,000, which is appreciative.
Let me give you
It's
some.
a relatively, comparatively, and I'm not complaining and I'm not asking for sympathy, but we're relatively low compared to the organizations throughout the state, which we like. We like to be
What I'm saying, Dave, is,
more efficient.
We don't give you this extra money, and you need extra money, come back and see us. I think that's.
He's not going to agree to that.
Yeah.
Well-
It's hard to.
Let me, you ask for numbers, okay? And we're talking about such a small amount in compared to the entire budget.
Maybe
I
you guys,
understand
maybe
that.
you guys could split something.
But it has to be balanced. So if we were to do away with this cut, and we were to try to absorb it in the other departments, we could move state's attorney to 63,832.
You can't hire an attorney and pay the benefits for that.
I'm just throwing,
At the library, if that was your goal on the library.
the second item I would have would be on the library would be 75, and then roads would be 75.
61,000?
I feel like I'm playing Keno or something up here when I'm watching this.
I know.
That's how budgets are made.
The Pac 14 tape needs to be changed.
So we're saying take it from the library?
61,000 for COLA for library.
How much is it for 63,832?
All right, we're gonna leave the state's attorney at 80.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna fund the state's attorney, it has to be at that number or don't do it. I think that's probably what it comes down to. Because
Right.
they can't hire with the benefits like Joe said, so it'd have to be something else.
All right, so if
How much
we
do you want the state's attorney at?
say
State's attorney alone.
Leave them alone.
state's attorney would stay at 80,000. That was 80, I believe, initially.
79,732.
Roads was at 80.
61,000 for the library?
61,000 to match the COLA for all county library employees.
Okay, that leaves us about $7,168 short.
Would that, can you,
All right, the suggestion was made that we could take that from the airport, so we could put the airport in at about 83,000. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry, that's wrong.
Who suggested that?
well, if that's the case, would a $19,000 increase?
Of course, and look, all right, hang on a second, let's not get distracted. All right, if the airport were 97,168 in cuts,
Sit on a sweat board.
Let's leave it in there and take that from the airport and let him promote the airport with that amount of money.
but that's what I'm suggesting, that the airport would be 97,168.
Let's take all of it.
97,168.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. And then state's attorney would be 80,
80 even?
yeah.
Okay.
Library would be 61.
61, yep.
And
I
roads,
think you're getting your money.
roads would be 80. 80.
We don't only want 25.9. That's all we want.
That
We don't want
matches.
more.
Okay, that matches.
Matches.
Yep. we're
President
looking at the-
Cannon,
Excuse me?
the Pac 14 tape needs to be changed.
Okay, all right, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. 5-minute recess.
Your silver tongue, Dave.